The French president urges immediate aid delivery to Gaza. He condemns the killing of 8 paramedics in Gaza. The Israeli occupation forces have targeted a densely populated area in the Shaja'iyya neighborhood, resulting in numerous deaths and injuries. Many injured individuals remain trapped on the rubble of homes destroyed by the Israeli occupation. The number of deaths has surpassed 30, and more than 50 were injured, with more casualties expected as rescue teams search for missing persons. Medical sources anticipate the death toll will rise due to critical injuries. Hamas has announced that it successfully took control of 2 Israeli drones while they were conducting intelligence operations in the Shaja'iyya neighborhood. The group claimed to have neutralized the drones during their surveillance missions. This marks a significant development in ongoing tensions, highlighting the growing complexities of the conflict and the use of technology in military operations in the region. French President Macron has for the immediate resumption of the release of detained individuals and an immediate ceasefire. He emphasized the urgency of restoring humanitarian aid to those in need, ensuring the safety of civilians. Macron's appeal highlights the need for swift action to bring relief to the affected population and secure. U.S. Senator Bernie is describing it as ethnic cleansing and a war crime, the violence and devastating impact on Palestinian civilians. Sander emphasized that the international community must hold those responsible accountable, urging an end to the Israeli military actions and a focus on justice and human rights in the region.
Minimum wage to a living wage. At least $17.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has rejected a new Israeli proposal to control Gaza's aid deliveries, warning it would limit aid to the last calorie. Guterres emphasized that the UN will not engage in any plan that violates humanitarian principles of neutrality and impartiality. With Gaza's aid blockade since March the 2nd, he criticized Israel's refusal supplies into Gaza until Hamas releases detainees, urging full humanitarian access and a permanent ceasefire.
Not fully respect humanitarian principles.
And for more analysis, we now move to Riham in our newsroom.
Thank you, Selma. With Professor of Political Science at Al-Quds University, Dr. Ayman Al-Arqab. Welcome to Qnews, sir. Thank you for joining us. Sir, let's start off. President Emmanuel Macron has called for a ceasefire and the resumption of aid to Gaza. What kind of pressure can France impose as an international actor realistically on the Israelis?
After greetings to France, France has a great influence in the world, to one of the big players in the EU, and for the EU can use its tools to pressure Israel, even the strategic security between EU and Israel, along with the economic cooperation, so that they can pressure Israel, even if the EU could not pressure the Israeli occupation, at least they may just facilitate the delivery of the humanitarian aid. And the children parallels vaccines are now not hospital, and if it's not going into, so they'll be having a great disaster for the children in Gaza.
Okay, so sir,
Hassan?
rejection of the Israeli aid control plan influence international diplomacy when it comes to the flow of aid in Gaza?
The UN Secretary General Guterres, and he's the last respectful man in the United States, issued several demands to issue resolutions under the Citizens Act to stop the genocide and delivering the aid into Gaza. But all the authorities never gave him a chance to do so. We are talking about aid, not arms. Basic assistance for life. Even the Israelis is acting war crimes and exceeding all of the international norms. But some of the friendly countries tried, but the Israeli occupation is only supported. So he has not started to use the starvation as war weapons. Only the children and the civilians are paying the ultimate price of such a war.
Well, since you've talked about like the civilian lives there, how do you assess the humanitarian impact of the Israeli strikes on the Shajaiya, and what does it indicate about the current phase of the war? We've seen an increase when it comes to the Israeli airstrikes.
Firstly, today the occupation is using the policy of the burned land as demolishing everything in the territories and dominating its control in 20% of the territories, and the neighboring villages is around 20% of the whole lands dominated by the occupation. We've seen just an appalling strike destroying the homes in Shajaiya under the pretext that is targeting leaders of Hamas to destroy a full outskirt neighborhood and to prove that that this person they are targeting wasn't there, so that will prove the failure of the intel of the occupation. All this is contradictory the international law along with the humanitarian law. But we have seen that hands now upon at the court of the international community to practice its role.
Yes, well, since you've brought up international law and diplomacy in the international community, what sort of legal or diplomatic measures that could be taken to ensure unimpeded humanitarian access, aid access to Gaza, the Israeli restrictions and blockade?
With nothing but for the UN Security Council to use the Article 7 of Geneva to end the war and impose the occupation to deliver the assistance into Gaza, particularly tons or thousands of tons of shipments are paid at the Egyptian borders, and to stay under the sun and the rains that will be spoiled. And Also, the drinking water aren't enough, and even to the plants for the desalination, the waters that lacking the power, and if the people are using by the bills, it will be polluted. And so these data are actually contradict the all international and humanitarian norms.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. From Ramallah, that was a professor of political science at Al-Quds University, Dr. Ayman Al-Arqab. Thank you for joining us here on Qnews. And now back to you, Selma, in our studio.
Thank you, Riham, for conducting this analysis. Egypt has strongly condemned Israel's decision to close 6 UNRWA-run schools in occupied East Jerusalem, calling it a dangerous move that undermines the rights of Palestinian refugees. Cairo reaffirms its unwavering support for UNRWA and its operations, especially in East Jerusalem, emphasizing the agency's critical role in delivering essential services. Egypt also firmly rejected the ongoing systematic campaign against UNRWA, stressing the need to uphold the rights and dignity of Palestinian refugees. The International Committee of the Red Cross has condemned the killing of 8 paramedics in Gaza, highlighting the increasing dangers faced by both civilians and humanitarian workers. The head of the ICRC subdelegation in Gaza emphasized that medical and humanitarian workers are protected under international law and must be allowed to work safely. The paramedics were killed while providing aid in the Palestinian side of Rafah during Israeli shelling, cutting off vital support for the wounded. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has condemned Israel's decision to close 6 UNRWA schools in occupied Jerusalem, describing it as a violation of international law. The OIC stressed that this decision undermines the UN agency's mandate, established by Resolution 302, and deprives Palestinian refugee children of their right to education. It also criticized Israel's curriculum aiming to erase Palestinian identity and called for global support to protect UNRWA's work. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency has reported that Gaza's children are severely impacted by the Israeli blockade. Now, in its 6th week, since March 2nd, Israel's closure of crossings has halted essential supplies, including food, water, and medicine, leading to the agency urgently called for a ceasefire to address the escalating crisis. Moving on to Cairo, where the Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel-Ati has highlighted the Khartoum process as a crucial initiative for managing migration between the Mediterranean and the Horn of Africa. That came during a press conference at the Khartoum process meeting, where the Egyptian, French, and German foreign ministers addressed regional migration challenges. Abdel-Ati stressed the importance of human rights-focused solutions to illegal migration, integrating humanitarian and developmental efforts, and Egypt's success in tackling illegal migration. He also welcomed Sudan's return to the initiative. France Minister Delegate for Internal Affairs has praised Egypt's leadership of the Khartoum process, highlighting Cairo's effective role in promoting regulated migration and migrant rights. He emphasized that the Cairo Declaration strengthens Euro-African cooperation against irregular migration. Germany's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs echoed appreciation for Egypt's humanitarian role in hosting refugees and stressed the need to create job opportunities for migrants. That comes as an upcoming London conference will address actionable steps to combat illegal migration. Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Sharif during the Khartoum Process Ministerial Conference. Egypt's Foreign Ministry has emphasized Egypt's strong historical ties with Sudan, reaffirming Egypt's support for Sudan's security, stability, and territorial integrity. The two foreign ministers discussed developments in Sudan, efforts to restore stability, and ways to address the country's humanitarian challenges through regional support. And now move on to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Israel has claimed that Hezbollah is attempting to rebuild a secret underground weapons production site in Shuaifet, a neighborhood in Beirut's southern suburbs. This site, located near a school and beneath residential buildings, was previously targeted in November 2024. Israel emphasized that engineering equipment disappeared during a surprise inspection, only to return after it ended, violating the ceasefire, stating this activity undermines the ceasefire agreement and Hezbollah's efforts to hide its military activities. Lebanon's Interior and Municipalities Minister Ahmed Al-Hajjar has issued decrees calling for elections to select members of municipal councils and mayors in North Lebanon and Aqar. The elections are set for May 11, 2025. The decrees also outline the designated locations of polling stations within these two governorates. Lebanon's Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri has called for a joint session of the parliamentary committees on finance and budget, administration and justice, and national economy, trade, industry, and planning. The session is scheduled for April 16, 2025. The committees will review a draft law proposed by Decree number 103, dated April 2nd, which aims to amend parts of the 1956 Banking Secrecy Law and the 1963 Code of Money and Credit. Lebanon's Public Works, Transport, Energy, and Water Committee has convened to address the severe drought and low rainfall expected in Lebanon this year. In coordination with Energy Minister Joe Saadi, they discussed urgent measures to mitigate the effects. A parliament member highlighted the need for preparedness and resource mobilization to prevent hardship. The committee stressed water conservation and warned of an impending water crisis. Saudi announced plans for an emergency response to tackle the summer shortage. And now we move to the latest developments in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, has said that Russia's attacks on Ukraine have intensified despite a ceasefire offer. That came after her meeting with Ukrainian Prime Minister. Kallas confirmed that Ukraine would soon receive its first tranche of windfall profits from Russian assets, with further payments emphasizing the European Union to extend Ukraine's free trade agreement until at least the end of this year.
It is 1.4 billion euro from Russian immobilized assets.
Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has said that Ukraine continues to strike Russian energy infrastructure on a daily basis. Zakharov added this is in violation of a U.S. brokered 30-day moratorium on strikes on energy infrastructure. Russia and Ukraine have both accused each other of violating the pause on strikes. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said China is ongoing war in Ukraine and that the outcome of Russia's aggression could have a substantial impact on security in Asia. Speaking at a Keio University in Tokyo, Rutte said the conflict highlighted the links in the European and Pacific security environments. The NATO chief also defended U.S. President Donald Trump's long-running drive to push NATO members to spend a greater proportion of their national budgets on defense, saying it was only logical that European NATO allies should match American spending in percentage terms. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Dorothy Shea told the Security Council the United States will have no patience for bad faith negotiations or violation of commitments as it seeks to end the war in Ukraine. Shea said the United States urges the Russian Federation to bear in mind that strikes like those on Kryvyi Rih and executions of prisoners of war have the potential to damage peace efforts and all dependent discussions. The Security Council met after a Russian missile attack on the Ukrainian city of Kryvyi Rih last week killed 11 adults and 9 children in one of the deadliest attacks on civilians in months, jeopardizing Washington's ceasefire push.
This war must end. We will have no patience for bad faith negotiation or violation of
Ukraine has claimed Russian forces launched drone attacks on the Ukrainian cities of Dnipro, Kharkiv, and Kramatorsk, triggering fires and injuring at least 17 people. The Ukrainian Air Force said that Russia launched 55 drones during its overnight attack. The Air Force shot down 32 drones and another 8 did not reach their targets, likely due to electronic warfare countermeasures. It did not specify what happened to the remaining 15 drones. China has called on the United States to stop its arrogant and bullying behavior after Donald Trump's 104% duties on Chinese imports kicked in. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said the U.S. continues to impose tariffs on China indiscriminately. Lin added if the United States really wants to solve the problem through dialogue and negotiation, it should adopt an attitude of equality, respect, and mutual benefits. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said U.S. President Donald Trump believes that China has to make a deal with the United States concerning additional tariffs. Leavitt said that the Chinese want to make a deal but don't know how to do it. If China returns, Trump would be incredible to do what's best for the American people. Leavitt confirmed that the U.S. would impose a 104% tariff on China after Beijing did not lift its retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods by the noon Tuesday deadline set by Trump.
You guys ready?
What about tariffs?
Look, I just spoke to the president about this.
United States Trade Representative has said exemptions to President Donald Trump's global tariffs are not expected near term. He said that Swiss cheese in the process would undermine the goal of trade reciprocity. The trade representative who oversees the implementation of the tariffs also said there is no particular timeline for trade negotiations. Trump has already implemented a 10% tariff on almost all imports to the world's largest consumer market, and targeted tariffs of up to 50% on many trading partners are due to take effect today.
We will see where that goes. I think we need to work with our closest friends to make sure that we have trading arrangements that work.
South Korea has announced emergency support measures for its auto sector, seeking to reduce the blow of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. To help prevent any liquidity issues, the government will raise policy financial support for automakers to 15 trillion won in 2025 from the 13 trillion won previously planned. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we've been covering. The French president urges immediate aid delivery to Gaza. A U.S. senator condemns Gaza violence as ethnic cleansing. And the ICRC condemns the killing of 8 paramedics in Gaza. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.